There's a small forewarning with this review. There will be a lot of comparisons between this and the first game. It may get old hearing me make comparisons, but I'm trying to make this video appeal to those of you who have never played the first title and those of you who have, or have at least watched my review on the first one. If you haven't watched it already, it would be pretty dope if you did. Since we're on the Deus Ex train, the next stop is Invisible War, and man, is it rough. Released in December of 2003 with Harvey Smith as the game's director during his time with Ion Storm, it was meant to be a more accessible version of the first game since they had to appeal to a wider audience. I will go ahead and tell you now that everything that is wrong with this game, from the polish, story, maps, and gameplay mechanics, can all be attributed to the fact that whatever the first iteration of this game's concept was, had to run on the Halo machine. In 2052, a cybernetically augmented agent named JC Denton was on a mission to uncover a conspiracy about a man trying to rule the world and become a god. In doing so, he merged with an AI to make the world a better place under his watchful eye. Instead, because of the fusion, he went into a coma. While doing this, he simultaneously thwarted the Illuminati's plans of ruling the world and destroyed the global communications network, sending humanity into a new dark age that would be called the Great Collapse. 20 years have passed since the collapse, and humanity is starting to regain its bearings. New organizations have sprung up while older, lesser-known ones are clawing their way back into power. One of the newer organizations is known as the Ordered Church. Many of its members are comprised of survivors of the Great Collapse who are in pursuit of something called natural balance, which essentially means that they'll use technology unless it affects nature and the natural human form. Another new group actually existed before the collapse but was destroyed before the events of Deus Ex 1 and reformed under new leadership in 2070. As a now offshoot from the Ordered Church, the current Knights Templar believe themselves to be the descendants and modern incarnation of the Knights Templar of the 12th century. They are vehemently opposed to biomods and nanotechnology in all forms, and sees them as a plague that violates the purity of humanity. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, you have the Omar Techno sect, who originated in Russia at the time of the Great Collapse. Due to the unforgiving winters Russia has and no global communication capabilities, the Russian populations were forced to go underground, adapt, and survive at all costs. They augmented themselves to an unprecedented degree and see themselves as the next step in human evolution. Our final new major player in the world is the World Trade Organization. It was formed shortly after the collapse and is designed to supervise and liberalize international trade to encourage peace. All of these organizations play a major role in a post-collapse world, be it through trade, influence, or conflict. Now, who's the main character and how do we play a role in all of this? Well, we play as Alex D. He's currently training in the Tarsus Academy and getting accustomed to his biomods. During his time in training, you get to meet 3 other cadets. Leo Jankowski, a top performer who's a little full of himself.
Would I be running if there was an emergency? Me? You never heard the name Leo Jankowski in Chicago?
Right, Jankowski, it's great to finally meet you.
Well, don't be intimidated by my ranking. I make a point of treating every team member as an equal.
Clara Sparks, someone who's caring.
Was your family from there?
My foster parents.
Your parents? Oh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. If I can do anything to make you feel more at home, let me know.
And Billy Adams, who doesn't have much of a character right now, but that's okay, she'll have some development later on. You get to meet these characters all while the Academy is under attack.
Tarsus will be operating as a closed campus. Please remain in the main complex.
Now that you're caught up in regards to the setting, let's go over everything else before I lose my mind explaining the story. Being a game that came out on the original Xbox, it certainly looks the part. Character models are a bit stiff, textures are pretty solid in some areas while being extremely subpar in other areas, and lighting is not bad actually. It does a good job of bouncing off objects in the world and adding to the atmosphere in some areas. On top of that, the darkness the game presents isn't just for show. They brought the sneaking system back from the first game and... God. We'll get there, just not right now. As for the HUD, well, it's pretty ass. It's this fucking circle that's constantly on screen and it takes up more room than it should. Now that doesn't sound like a real issue until someone needs to talk to you outside of a cutscene. Then whatever's in front of you gets obscured by a text box and you can't really see what's going on. It sounds like a nitpick, but when you have a weapon equipped, trying to look through a circle that forces you to look more towards the center, with constant in-game chatter taking up that center of the screen, be ready just to stop whatever the hell you're doing long enough to gain most of your vision back. You could argue and say that the reason this game is like this is because it wasn't built to be played on a 16:9 monitor, and was more fit for TVs built in that era. Well, let me ask you this then. Does this look any better? Didn't think so. As for voice acting, expect the same mixed bag of quality. Some lines are done pretty well when they're read by someone with experience, and others sound like I do when reading a script.
Tried to get answers out of Dr. Nassif, but all she'd give me is the elevator code. It's 28901 if you need it. I don't know what's going on, but it's clear we're not safe. We don't know anyone here, so we'd better watch each other's back.
I'm from the Tarsus program. Dr. Nassif would want me to be taken back into custody.
Tarsus? Oh well, we don't know anything about the trials. Don't tell me there's been an escape. I warned Dr. Nassif. I said that if she wasn't careful, they'd end up with a J.C. Denton on their hands.
Taking care of the problem. The area is no longer hazardous.
Fantastic. Here's a few credits for your trouble.
It's not all bad though. There are a few people who sell their role really well, like the voice actor of our protagonist.
In the town outside the arcology. Here's a photo so you can spawn me quickly.
What's your rate?
For you, no charge. I'm waiting to pick up a passenger, but for now I'm open and feeling generous.
So you fly modified humans around the world. That's a pretty weird assignment. You're looking for one in particular?
I've finished my search of Cairo. I'm ready for the next destination.
And you don't care where I'm headed. You're ready to go anywhere I decide to go.
I've decided that you might be going in the right direction.
And a few minor characters who just do a fine job.
Already tossed back a few pints. May I say that I approve of your itinerary so far?
Glad you're enjoying yourself.
Tell you what, I'll give you the Sloshed Flyer special. Any local hops you need during the next 24 hours, just 50% more than my usual rate. Can't beat that.
Side note, in some of the conversations, the camera doesn't know what to do, so you'll get some pretty weird angles. Ambience this time around is better, with the music really staying in the background more than it did previously. As I just mentioned, the music is appropriately in the background and can work really well with most sections. And some tracks have no business being as good as they are. Here's some elevator music that was probably written by the legendary B.B. King himself. As for the tracks that are supposed to have a bit more energy, they kind of don't. This is boss music, by the way. So what happened here? I think that the music overall was toned down to convey this feeling of espionage and secrecy, which is fine, but every bit of it is background music. As I'm writing the script, I'm listening to every song on the soundtrack to see if there's anything that sticks out. I'm not saying that the music is bad, because it's most certainly not, but man, even the music was toned down in variety. Hell, even the menu's music has been toned down. Now compare that to Deus Ex 1's menu music and you'll see what I mean. What irks me the most about the music is that this title is more action-oriented than it is stealth and problem-solving, but none of the music reflects that. Well, except one song, but...
My God is weird, my God is scared, my God thinks I put it picture. My God is weird, my God is scared, my God thinks I put it picture.
Yeah... If I had to license a band in that era, I would have gone with Stereo Mud over whatever the fuck this is. At least their hit song was a banger. You gotta be kidding me. That was the only track in the entire OST that had any form of energy that wasn't just sitting in the background or building up tension just to die out. Don't get me wrong, I love me some good background music to add suspense and apprehension, but when over 90% of the tracks are only blah, 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 it gets old really fucking quick. Unlike last time, air travel is near non-existent because of the collapse. The only way to travel abroad is by hiring mercenary pilots who will take you where you need to go. Luckily, you'll have a few options throughout the game, so it becomes a non-issue pretty quickly. So with a pilot ready to take you anywhere you need to go, you'd expect some levels to be on par or maybe surpassing the size and quality of the first game. But no, levels are extremely small and vary in density. Because of the lack of size, levels feel more like hub areas connected by hallways and elevators rather than being expansive, intricate, maze-like playgrounds that we all know the studio is capable of. This was one of the largest letdowns once I figured out that the levels were going to be lacking in secrets and hidden rooms. It immediately made me question what went wrong, and we'll get into that later, but for right now, these levels feel like they were made as an inspired college kid's passion project more than something that was made by a full-blown studio. There are levels that may contain a vent or two to sneak through, or maybe even an elevator shaft to climb up, but the variability of options is almost gone. Even environmental puzzles have taken a hit from the reduced level size. Here's an example. I'm blocked by an electrical box preventing me from getting a few free items. Do I A, stack boxes and jump over it, B, turn it off to get to them, or C, go into the crawl space to get to the other side? Yeah, that was it. On a positive note, there aren't any waypoints or yellow paint in this title, so you do have a bit of a reason to explore. In most of the levels, someone from one of the major organizations will either contact you directly or be somewhere in the world to be found. They'll give you primary and secondary objectives to perform, and this can kind of help you get into the mindset of someone who works for these factions. You'll run into several scenarios that will benefit one faction but hurt another, so expect to make some enemies along the way. Most of these choices won't affect the ending, so you can go in between them whenever you feel like it. There are one or two major decisions in the late game though, so be aware. The levels do stand out from one another, so there's another nice plus. The locales you'll visit are fun in their own ways, and their overall map designs and art directions help you with some of the monotony you'll encounter. They do have character whenever it can be crammed in, so I can say they at least tried. But that doesn't make up for the fact that most of these levels are just a letdown. I had hopes that most, if not all of the levels would be better versions of Hong Kong in some way, all with their own little secret areas, hidden compartments, and a set-piece main area that oozed flavor, but all we got was hub area, hallway, hub area, hallway, hub area, hallway. It frustrates me to no end because I know the studio is capable of better. Not only that, they got rid of the satellite photos of the maps, and I'm not gonna lie, that one hurt me a bit. Like the last title, this game presents with 4 different difficulty options: easy, medium, hard, and realistic. I played on medium for the first review playthrough and ran through a bit of it on realistic for some footage and to compare the difficulties. The main differences between the 4 difficulties are damage dealt and received, enemy accuracy, and the amount of ammo dropped. So like last time, difficulty doesn't change much when it comes to the stealth elements of the game. Since I mentioned ammo, let's talk about one of the many downgrades that plague the sequel. Ammo is shared across all weapons, meaning whatever ammo you have will work with your sniper rifle, pistol, or rocket launcher simultaneously, all with their own alt fires. The way it's tracked is through its actual magazine count and bar that represents how full a magazine is. Different types of weapons use a different amount of this bar, and there's really no way to quickly glance over to see how many shots you have left with a given weapon. Now, what's the problem with this approach? Well, it doesn't allow you to stockpile specific ammo types to save for later. So when you use a rocket launcher to kill a tougher enemy, you'll have less ammo for your other weapons. Ammo can be found or looted from enemies, but towards the end of the game when the difficulty spikes, the amount of ammo you find won't come close to the amount you need for some of the later enemies. When I make these reviews, I tend to either leave stuff out on purpose for people to discover on their own so they can have that wow factor when playing the game for the first time, or I just don't mention it because it's not too important. One thing I wanted players to discover on their own was that in the first game, weapons could be modified to even further a certain playstyle. Here though, the amount of weapon mods you can attach to a weapon has been reduced to 2. It prevents players from creating a god weapon they default to, so good on them for making sure players don't become grossly overpowered, but at the same time, it would have been helpful and felt earned to have such great weapons by the end to deal with these tougher enemies. You could say just sneak by every enemy you encounter, but again, levels are so small and condensed that there's really no option to do so. The game is more oriented towards action and gunplay rather than player agency and choice. But CarmelOP, surely the skill system from the first game got an overhaul with new skills that allow players to do more than they could before. And dear viewer, I'd love to tell you that were the case, but unfortunately they didn't do that. In fact, they went the polar opposite direction. They completely removed the skill system from the sequel so you don't have an option to choose how you'll want to play this game. But hey, at least you can choose your gender. If I had to guess why they removed the skill system, it would be because of 2 reasons. The first reason is because, again, the sizes of the levels. I didn't mention it in the first review, but aside from completing objectives to earn skill points, they can also be earned by exploring and finding hidden areas. In the sequel, however, because of the level size, there's no opportunity for exploration, thus no way to earn extra skill points. I think the second reason for this is because of the way old weapon handling worked. In the first game, if your weapon skill was too low, shots would miss and you'd be frequently wasting ammo. As an RPG, that makes sense. Your character sucks at a particular thing, but remember, this game is less about player agency and choice and more about action and gunplay. One of the RPG elements that did stick around is the augment system, and like everything else, it's objectively worse. Now they're called biomods, and they're basically identical to nanotech from the first game. They can be found out in the world or be bought from vendors. Additionally, there are 2 types of biomods, legal biomods and black market biomods. When you go to slot them in, you have 2 choices per slot for legal biomods, and black market biomods come with 1. Feel free to experiment this time around though. If you install a mod, you can override it at any time if it's not working out for you. There are no upgrade canisters this time around, so in order to upgrade a biomod, you have to use a biomod canister. This is one of the few things that kind of give players a bit of agency on how they approach the game. Do they unlock all the mods they can first, or do they selectively and meticulously choose their upgrades? So where does this system go downhill? Well, by the end of the first game, you had 9 augment slots available to use at any given moment. Agent Denton was well-rounded and highly customizable with augments alone. Here, however, that number was cut down to 5 because of reasons. I do have suspicions as to why a lot of gameplay systems just kind of suck in this title, but we'll get to that in the polish section. One final thing that got downgraded are the lockpicks. Well, not downgraded, they just got flat out deleted. Now every door or lock you have to break into takes a multi-tool. So not only do you have computers and other electronics requiring a limited resource to be used, but now that limited resource is used for other things as well. So now you have to be even more meticulous about what you do or don't open. You better have that quick save button ready. Thankfully, the core gameplay loop is intact. Kind of. You do get dropped into an area, you are given directions on what your objectives are with no objective markers whatsoever, and again you are left to your own devices as to how you will progress through the game, but not really. Every area in the game feels ridiculously streamlined, and the ability to get lost and discover fun stuff on your own just doesn't exist. All in service of a story that is hard to keep up with more than it is confusing. Without spoiling it, a conspiracy is front and center within the first half hour of the game, and you're presented with choices on how you approach a mission. Kill or don't kill a target. Do this for this faction instead of that faction. Help Starbucks or help Dunkin' Donuts. You get it. That's about as far as variety of gameplay goes. Which, to be fair, at least you're picking sides early on and can kind of roleplay in that way, but it doesn't make up for being forced down one narrow hallway to another. After watching the final cutscene, you are again taken back to the main menu to either load a previous save or start a new game. There is no New Game Plus, and this time around it's a blessing because there's honestly no reason to replay the game from start to finish. Sure, you can make a few different choices when it comes to which factions you want to align yourself with throughout the game, but that doesn't change the core loop. You could argue that it's worth a replay to find some things you may have missed, but as I've stated multiple times now, the levels are simply too small to hide anything. You can't even try a different character build because there are no skill points and biomods can be changed at the drop of a hat. So there's no reason to replay it because you can experience everything it has to offer in just one playthrough. Invisible War will take you roughly 9 hours to finish, which is respectable for most games, but for a sequel to Deus Ex, that time is an indicator for how little this game has to offer. On top of that, with little to no reason to replay it, I have to ask, what's really going on with this game and why does this game feel so gutted when compared to the first? Well, 3 things. The first is that the studio moved from Deus Ex 1's Unreal Engine to Unreal Engine 2 for this game. Optimizing an engine and using it to its fullest capabilities on a console you've never developed anything on is no easy task and asking for trouble. So it makes sense as to why some things in the game didn't work out so well. The second issue is that the PC version of this game was built with a single core processor in mind, meaning that if you ran anything that was dual core or more, you'd likely run into issues getting it to run and getting it not to crash. The third and largest issue that plagues this game is that it was built for the Xbox first. I don't mean it was released on Xbox then came to PC later, I mean it was built with a console first approach. This is extremely detrimental for several obvious reasons, but to highlight how this affects the game as a whole takes a bit of explanation. Let's go back to the level design. Like I said earlier, levels are extremely small and can feel like going from one hub area to the next at times. The reason for this is because that's all the Xbox could handle without crashing. And you remember how I mentioned earlier that you're constantly going in between areas to do mission objectives? Well, the Xbox version was able to handle unloading and loading levels pretty easily, all things considered. But for PC, the game literally has to shut down to load the next area. If you don't believe me, play this game for yourself and keep the task manager open on another screen. Then when you load into an area, watch the game terminate its own process and create a new one. I think that this is the most jank thing I've ever seen next to the TF2 Coconut. So since the levels are criminally small, how does that affect the rest of the game? Well, for one, opportunities for exploration really don't exist. Sure, you can find a vent that lets you sneak past a few guards, but that's as far as it goes. There's not entire hidden areas for you to find, there's not that many opportunities to find alternate routes to your objective, and the number of NPCs in one area is incredibly diminished, so there's not a lot of dialogue you can listen to. Remember the ammo system I mentioned earlier? I wonder if they made all the weapons use the same ammo because they couldn't model each type of ammo without causing problems on the console. And can the same line of thinking be applied to why lockpicks and multi-tools are one and the same now? I wonder if the reason for getting rid of the skill point system was due to the smaller levels and a small game as a whole because there wouldn't be any meaningful ways to earn skill points. I'll give credit to the devs for trying to do the most they could within their power, but holy shit does this cause problems on PC. To hopefully avoid any launch issues, download the Deus Ex 2 Visible Upgrade mod and play around with it for a bit. It's not going to work right away your first time messing with the settings, but it's the best shot you have of getting it to run in widescreen. Side note, I highly recommend finishing this game in one sitting because there's no guarantee that the mod will work after you shut down your PC, so you'll have to go through the entire process of getting it to where you want to again. It could be a bug that only I'm running into, but I've had to do this 4 times now just to grab some specific footage. Also, you don't have to install the visual upgrades it comes with if you want a more vanilla looking game. Unfortunately, the story suffers tremendously from these limitations as well. While it tries to be complex and interesting, its delivery is so fast in the first few sections that you honestly don't know what's going on. I was mentally checked checked out by the time I left the tutorial area because I was shotgunned with so much partial information that I just started playing the game, loosely being aware of what was happening. At about the halfway point of the game though, it slows down and becomes a lot more digestible and really got interesting. It got me invested more than what I thought it could with this horrendous opening, but by that point, if players even make it that far, it'll be hard to suck most people back in. If you don't want the story spoiled for you, then click to here.
The infusion lab?
Evacuated.
Trainees?
Gave the order myself.
What did you tell them?
I told them to run.
That's all they need to hear until we reach Seattle.
Agreed.
Anything new on the terrorist?
He's in the city. No ID yet. Unclear whether we're the target.
An academic distinction if he really has a nanite-detonator.
Scanning. Survey region clear.
The security bots have acquired the target. We're too late!
Helipad, let's go. Move! Did they destroy the whole city to get at us?
Our enemies aren't that desperate.
Perhaps we made a new enemy.
What if they already know about the Seattle facility?
We have other options.
We aren't equipped to fight a war.
We're going to change the terms of engagement. It's our war, not theirs. We don't need cities or armies. We have the cells of human bodies. An invisible weapon for an invisible war.
The game picks up right after this cutscene and you step into Alex's shoes for the first time. You get acquainted with the controls, learn a few basics, and observe the holy number. While meeting up with the other trainees, you come under attack and have to escape. On your way out, you run into Billy Adams, who has her motivations revealed.
The Order contacted me in Chicago and told me how to uncover Tarsus's treachery. We're not trainees, we're test subjects. Finding out I've been used like that, I don't feel so bad about disobeying orders.
So Billy has aligned herself with the Order Church. The group mainly made up of survivors of the Great Collapse and insinuates that you, along with all the other Tarsus Academy trainees, are experiments. Naturally, Alex makes the wise decision of not making any choices at all until he has all the information.
I need to know more before I start making decisions.
He heads back to his room as instructed for a pretty underwhelming reveal.
Watch the ceiling while I cut the power.
That's one of the subjects.
The sound barrier.
Not just a sound barrier, you can see it.
What do you think you'll do?
Which one is it?
D03.
I didn't get it.
This is one of the worst parts of the story. and you're not even out of the first level. They didn't save this story beat for later on to be a grand reveal, they just flat out said it. It's so odd. I was expecting some kind of secrecy with a few hints to this reveal so you could piece a bit of it together on your own before it actually being revealed. Hell, they could have used this central hub area for the game to return to between missions. That way it really feels like home before having the rug pulled out from underneath you. This is what I mean when I said the story shotguns you with so much information that it's hard to process one element before a new one is demanding your attention. On your way out, Dr. Nassif, project leader of the biomod portion of the Tarsus Academy, stops you for some exposition without really telling you anything.
Many organizations would like to see us fail. That's perhaps all I should say for now.
Why should I trust someone who spies on me in my own apartment?
We keep our operation secret for a reason, Alex. Don't expect a full debriefing while you're still in danger of being captured. Now install your biomods and get out of there.
Once you escape from Tarsus Academy, you're free to roam the streets of Seattle and have hit the point of the game where you can do things on your own. Like I said earlier, you'll be doing smaller quests for any of the factions that have an interest in the area. I know it's been a minute, so let's do a refresher on the current factions. The Ordered Church, which is mainly made up of survivors of the Great Collapse. The Knights Templar, an offshoot of the Order Church who are against all forms of biomodification. Opposite from them is the Omar Techno sect, who have installed a staggering amount of modifications onto themselves to the point where people question if they're even human. And the World Trade Organization, who manages international trade. At the request of Billy, you make your way to the Order Church and come into contact with Lin Mei Chen, the second in command in the Order. During these conversations, it's brought up that the purpose of the Tarsus Academy was to perfect human biomodification, making it adaptable to any host. Not only that, but the Academy itself is part of an obscure group called Apostle Corps, who also has ties to the Mako weapons manufacturing facility not far from Seattle. Alex deduces that's where Dr. Nassif may be hiding, and Lin Mei Chen tasks you with infiltrating the weapons facility and killing a scientist who's working on a new weapon. While working your way into the Mako facility, Donna Morgan of the WTO chimes in asking you to upload the schematics instead. During several missions of the game, these quote-unquote choices will pop up. They really don't amount to too much other than dialogue changing. It is interesting to see though that they allowed this amount of role-playing in a game where it's gutted everywhere else. While on the way to the weapons lab, you find the project director. He reveals that the Knights Templar were responsible for the attack in Chicago in the opening cutscene and refuses to elaborate too much as to why though. Rummaging through his office reveals you can find a message left by Dr. Nassif.
I don't know what we'll do if headquarters gets hit as well. More after I arrive in Egypt.
So Apostle Corps has some sort of home base in Cairo. I guess we know where you're going to find your next target. But first, you must deal with the scientist in the weapons lab.
Alright, after killing the scientist, we find a pilot and head to Cairo. While in Cairo, Lin Mei Chen wants you and Billy to team up and help the locals who are suffering from a plague that was left over from the Great Collapse. In doing so, the hope is that they'll direct you towards Dr. Nassif's location. On your way to the local village, you'll run into Billy and a new character. During this conversation, Billy reveals that the Apostle Corps headquarters is in Cairo. While exploring the village, you run into Leo, who's working as a mercenary for the Omar. They reveal that a cure exists for the plague and gives you a pass and instructions on how to get to it and release it into the village. As you're working on this goal, you'll run into Templar agents conspiring to keep the cure from Cairo's citizens.
That computer terminal over there.
Fantastic. The nanoformers will begin cleaning up the pollution in the Medina right away. The air should be safe within 24 hours.
Now that you've cured the plague, time to kill the Templar trying to keep Cairo citizens sick.
You won't get away with this.
Then we get information as to where the Apostle Corps headquarters is, and then go there in hopes of finding Dr. Nassif. While on your way there, you run into Clara, another one of the trainees from the Tarsus Academy who has now aligned herself with the WTO. She asks you to not kill Dr. Nassif, but we all know what I'm about to do.
Once a destroyer like Dr. Nassif believes she is improving humanity, nothing can save her. Come, hire a pilot from the Fox Coffee Shop at 107 and help us take up the trade route.
But before this, you get a huge exposition piece and a more appropriate reveal.
Here you are, our biggest secret, walking straight into a deployment of Templars. Surely you've guessed. You're the next generation of the technology MJ-12 used to create JC Denton. You are the third Denton prototype, a clone of JC.
MJ-12? The offshoot of the Illuminati? This is almost unbelievable. They're the ones who started the Grey Death. I was supposed to be part of a plot to take over the world?
Until your older brother, JC, broke up their network and in the process caused the world economic collapse. When you were 5, Apostle Corps moved you and your foster parents to Chicago.
From Area 51. My parents always said we were from Palm Springs. So is JC Denton here? Is that who you're protecting?
The directors of this facility are either dead or captured. JC was never one of them, but I don't know who was running this lab. There wasn't much communication between the different cells.
That's all you know about the leaders?
I'm as ignorant as you. I did see the Paladins remove a cryogenically frozen body. Maybe that was the facility director. Maybe a botched experiment. Who knows?
So this is the end of Apostle Corps?
In Cairo, maybe so. I've been trying to reach Trier, Germany, our last hidden base, but all lines are down. I found out that the leader of that cell is a man named Tracer Tong. He's the only one who can contact JC. If you insist on tracking down our leaders, you can hire a pilot at the Pequods on level 107 and go to Trier.
So you're a clone of JC Denton, but why? Well, that'll be revealed later. We gotta get to Germany and meet up with Tracer Tong, who survived the collapse. He reveals that underneath this small town in Germany, there's a facility that houses a gateway constructed by JC that leads to a secret base in Antarctica. Yeah, it's still as ridiculous as it was in the first game, but I'm here for it. The Templars have broken into the lab and sent someone through. The gate only works for those who share the same genetic code as JC. He also tells Alex that the leader of the Order, Her Holiness, was kidnapped and is being held prisoner by the Templars. Now it's your job to rescue her, but Tracer Tong does give you a hint as to where to go. He tells you to go speak with the head of the WTO in order to get some information on how to get into the secret facility. The head of the WTO, Chad Dunmere, also needs you to go on a rescue mission into the facility to rescue his security chief, Donna Morgan, who's been giving you alternatives to several mission objectives as the game has gone on. Making your way into the facility can be a bit of a challenge, seeing as how the entrance is guarded by several of the Templars and even more are patrolling the inside of the facility. After a bit of exploring, you'll find Her Holiness.
Are you Her Holiness? It's strange seeing you as just another person.
Yes, I'm just another ordinary human being like you. My name is Nicolette Duclair.
So yeah, Nicolette, a former member of Silhouette who helped JC Denton in his mission, is now the leader of a world religion.
Crazy. I lost my virginity out here. I believe Mom was out conspiring to get me into La Sorbonne at the time.
Not only that, but she's part of the Illuminati, as is Chad Dunmere, the head of the WTO. They're in Germany working together to find a cell of Templars being led by Luminun Saman, the new Grand Master of the Knights Templar. She tasks you with finding a sequence module to activate the gateway to JC's hideout. After a short plane ride to Saman's hideout, you kill a few Templar soldiers, break into their church, and make contact with them.
You aren't so special anymore, Denton. Maybe you remember Billy Adams.
Luminant Saman, where are you?
She's as much Denton as you, thanks to the Apostle Corps infusions. I sent her through the teleporter to locate and kill JC.
Saman reveals that Billy is working for him and is already in Antarctica trying to get to JC and kill him. That's about as far as this conversation goes. After finding the sequencing module, you head back to the gateway to get to Antarctica. Before making it there, Tracer Tong requests to have a word with you.
JC, remember what hangs in the balance. I haven't told you just how powerful JC has become.
One of the other trainees, Billy Adams, has already gone through the gate.
She has signed her soul over to the Luddites, the haters of technology. Protect JC, or she could plunge the world into another dark age. Trust me, I was like her 20 years ago, and I still share some of the blame for triggering the collapse.
I thought you said JC was powerful.
He is, but the merger with the Helios AI has been problematic. He has fallen into a state of near catatonia and will be vulnerable until you can revive him.
How do I do that?
By transferring your biomod architecture to JC, you will complete his interface to the AI and bring him out of the coma. This is a job we intended for Paul, but now it falls on your shoulders.
So now we know why Alex was created. He was a test subject of a study to use biomods in order to bring JC back. The fusion with the Helios AI 20 years ago took a toll on his body and sent him into a coma. For the past 20 years, Tracer Tong and Paul Denton have been working behind the scenes at Apostle Corps to find a way to bring JC back. With that information, you reactivate the gateway, teleport to Antarctica, and...
Yet more deviation from the plan. Paul was to arrive with the key, bringing the perfected genetic code. JC was to awaken to greet the new age. Instead, that woman came, followed soon after by the hateful ones. Where is Paul? What is going on?
The Greys have essentially been working as JC's guards, and believe it or not, they're not entirely out of left field, and they make multiple appearances in this title as well as actually being set up in the first game. I tried for as long as I could to not spoil their existence in this review and the last review, but at this point it's unavoidable. Once you make your way to JC's chambers, you have to go through constructs based off his memories to untangle them from the Helios AI enough for him to regain consciousness. As you're exploring one of these constructs, you run into Billy and fight her to the death.
Hosts initiating breakdown. Folks
After that, you finally awaken JC from his coma.
My scientists succeeded. You were the complete solution. My brother Paul was to be upgraded first so that he could carry the infusions through the gate, but there was a setback.
You're really JC Denton. What happened to your brother?
He nearly died 2 years ago. My chief scientist, Tracer Tong, thought that he had perfected the biomod substrate, but there were recombinant anomalies in Paul. He had to be cryogenically frozen to save his life. Luckily, you and the other subjects at last accepted complete transformation.
Which is why we can pass through the gate and enter this place.
That and much more. We're now ready to transform the human race. It became clear to me after the defeat of MJ-12 that the old answers to tyranny are inadequate. I needed the Helios merger in order to contemplate the problem effectively.
And?
I'm going to establish the first post-human civilization, and you're my first citizen. Welcome.
A new civilization? That's a pretty tall order. What do you need from me?
I need you to return to Cairo to rescue my brother Paul, who was seized by the Templars. Then meet me at Liberty Island, where in the ruins of an old military base there is an Aquinas node that can be used to distribute the infusion technology worldwide.
So back to Cairo we go to save Paul. I'm mainly hitting major story beats from here on since we've hit the point to where we know everyone's motivations and are just progressing to the end. While exploring the streets of Cairo, we run into Leo, who's almost completely become an Omar. This dude is my favorite character. He goes from doing a few contracts with the Omar to protecting them from the Templars to unwillingly becoming one of them. His arrogance of being a top performer led him down a path working with a faction that believes they are the next step in human evolution, only to have his arrogance rewarded with an attempt to make him part of the hive mind is poetic. Nothing says visual storytelling in a character's development more than looking like you belong on a poster in the back of a Spencer's.
Ah, the light. Ah.
Honestly, all of the characters have some great development independent of the protagonist. They've each joined or have even betrayed factions for their own goals. Billy joined the Order, then defected to the Templars, all because she was a guinea pig for experimentation, which ignited a rage inside of her. Leo went from working with the Omar to damn near becoming one, and Claire is working with the WTO, which is a front for the Illuminati. It's the polar opposite of RPGs in this sense, and it somehow works. In most RPGs, when companions join you, they kind of lose their identity because their end goals end up becoming yours. It's just an observation, but I wonder how an RPG would work with the approach of characters you've been on an adventure with leaving the group and living their own lives. Maybe that can be a future video of some kind. Aside from me rambling, it's pretty neat seeing the characters evolve from when we first met them to seeing their goals change as the game progresses. Anyway, in Cairo you're faced with a consequential decision. You can either save Paul Denton or help the Templar kill him. If you end up killing Paul, you might as well align yourself with the Templar all the way to the end of the game. You don't have to, but this would mean siding with one of the other factions at the end wouldn't make much sense. Now that he's saved, JC wants you and his brother to meet him on Liberty Island and achieve his end goal. While you're there, the multiple options for endings make themselves apparent and you can make a final choice. You have 4 options for endings. Siding with JC Denton creates a cybernetic link between all of humanity, essentially creating a hive mind where all needs are met.
Consensus remains clear. Yes, we will prolong this second century of peace. Economic automation is complete. Our research will now encompass other frontiers. Yes, this is the consensus we have created. Our unity will soon be absolute. The remaining boundaries are vanishing. Yes, share your mind with everyone. Open yourself. Your needs are the needs of all. Let us understand and be transformed. Yes, transform each other and transform yourselves. The only frontier that has ever existed is the self. Helios has spoken.
Siding with the Illuminati finally grants them the power they've been seeking for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. That power is access and control of all information and communications, allowing them to operate in secret.
How else would everyone, high and low, have been convinced to embrace communal scrutiny? It's hard to believe, but prior to 2052, humans lived in armed encampments of hundreds of millions of people. Now, after a century of peace, our great cities flourish. Enormous towers command the landscape on every continent. 1 trillion transactions per second. So much inscrutable activity. Yet we are united, at peace, and free. We owe it all to Ophelia, a name we all know. But what is Ophelia? A system? A place? We all know her name, yet our leaders deny that she even exists. Believe, citizens. Believe in the creator of our world. Is it wrong to love a being you cannot see? Such belief is the highest faculty a human being can develop. If you doubt that she exists, just look around. Look at all she has made.
Siding with Grandmaster Saman and the Knights Templar results in the persecution of individuals with biomods.
Allow me this allegory. Our forebears would say that we have at last reached the Delectable Mountains. Yes, well, we have conquered these mountains, and soon not one hill will have a name other than Clear. We have burned the land clean. What cells of disease remain are few in number and short on time. But friends, citizens, I tell you today that we have a new enemy. The enemy's name is Error, and it stands tall against the horizon. This new enemy is all too human. But we will act now, before these traitors spread their disease to other susceptible minds.
If you don't like any of those options, siding with Leo, thus the Omar, sees you killing the Dentons, the Templar, and Illuminati leadership, thus giving us this ending.
Centuries of war saw the rise and fall of many empires. It was the age of heroes, the battle-fired crucible of all subsequent history. In the end, the Earth was no longer green. Nothing survived on its surface other than a few embers of humankind. But from this crucible emerged the masterworks of evolution. They were fit not just for the new Earth, but for the most barren corners of creation. The glory of humanity would henceforward stretch on, through time and space, to the vanishing point of eternity.
So again, I have to ask, which ending is the canon ending? Well, none of them. Since none of the later Deus Ex titles take place after Invisible War, it's the final chronological chapter in the series, so there's no need to theorize which ending is the ending. I mean, you can pick one and say it's the ending, but there's no confirmation anywhere. And that's it. It's not as compelling when compared to the story of the first title, and on its own, it can't establish these factions well enough to get the player to understand them enough to align with them. If the story didn't feel so disconjointed and wasn't so goddamn fast-paced in the opening sections, I think I would have appreciated it a lot more. Not to mention that you don't have time to really get to know the characters at the beginning of the game either. Sure, you get brief introductions that give you an idea of their personalities and maybe you get a hint of their motivations, but at the same time, you're not given the opportunity to understand why things are happening. Later on, things do slow down, but by then, the damage is already done. Whenever I write these scripts, I play footage in the background just in case anything jumps out at me that I could use. Boy, did I hit the gold mine. This single line, uttered at the beginning of the game, perfectly encapsulates the first half of the story.
Where does the Order fit into all this? I thought they were a world church, not private investigators. I need to know more before I start making decisions.
Invisible War is a title that could never live to its fullest potential. Having to be released on the original Xbox, there really wasn't any way this was going to be able to hold a candle to the first game. Was it good when it came out in 2003? Probably, maybe, but its largest fault is that it's a Deus Ex game, with only a hint of what the first game is known for. Gameplay is dumbed down, environments are entirely too small, player choice takes a backseat, and the story was never going to top JC Denton's journey. One of the benefits the game does have is that it goes on sale fairly frequently, so if you want, you can try it for yourself. I really don't recommend that you do though. Nobody's stopping you, but I sincerely doubt you'll finish it. And don't take that as a challenge. Deus Ex Invisible War feels unfinished and unrefined. So many of its problems come from the constant comparisons to its predecessor, which are unavoidable if you've played it. I wasn't expecting a better story this time around, but I was expecting the mechanics to be expanded or at least improved, but they're not. I was hoping for more of the great levels that made the first installment shine, but all I got were loading screens. I was okay with playing a game that might not meet expectations, but it never really had the opportunity it deserved. If this had been a PC exclusive that was later ported over to console, I'm sure it would have been great.